and welcome to the Recognise podcast. The Recognise podcast is a place where we share stories that make life meaningful, asking what it's really like to live in someone else's shoes. Today, we are joined by Jodie Cariss. Jodie is the founder of Self Space, a contemporary mental health service offering a good conversation with a qualified therapist. No waiting lists, no rigid structures, just straightforward access to flexible therapy. Jodie is also a therapist, a Tavistock-trained executive coach, and a leading advocate for mental health accessibility. Jodie is the co-author of How to Grow Through What You Go Through, and a regular contributor to titles such as Stylist, Cosmopolitan, Vogue, The Times, and more. As well as this, she has a real heart for people involved with education. She has a deep compassion for marginalised young people, parents, carers, and school staff, and her founding company, which she still runs, that provides mental health support in the education sector. Before we jump in, don't forget to like and subscribe to stay up to date on all of our Recognise podcast episodes. Jodie, hello and welcome to the Recognise podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Honestly, it's a joy for you to be here. I met your co-founder Chance about a year ago, and I very much think you are like this as well. I always like to start the podcast by recognising the guests that I have on, but when I met Chance, he just like embodied this kindness and humanity, and we just had this amazing connection. And ever since, he's just been someone who's just been in my corner, like cheerleading me. And, you know, then meeting you, and I think you so embody that as well. You have come, you know, I've known you for about 15 minutes, other than of you, and you radiate warmth and light. And I am personally so inspired by what you've built. I'm excited to hear more about your story, but I'm very familiar with Self Space. And it's actually, you know, as a founder myself, there are these moments where, and I don't know whether you've ever done this, where you basically kind of fantasize about not doing what you're doing. So you go and look at other jobs on the days where it's really hard. And I had one of these days in the new year after kind of the busyness of our Christmas season, which is always mad. And I was like, oh, what else is out there? What could I do? And I, to be honest, I came to the conclusion that there isn't any other brand kind of like Recognise that I'd want to work for, but other than Self Space, that I would.
We'll have you in a flash.
Oh,
You're welcome. What job do you want?
Yeah, well, I looked at the marketing director on there, but but the reason for that is because it is a brand that is just all about supporting people. It is a brand that is full of, like, so visibly full of purpose and heart and warmth and just like all the good things. And I'm a big believer that what comes out of you can only come from within you. And so I just really wanted to recognise that you are an incredible human being.
Oh, darling, that's such a gorgeous introduction. Can you just be my hype woman wherever I go? Because I would love that. Felt so heartfelt.
Yeah.
And I think we recognise similarities, don't we, in each other. And I imagine that's reflected right back at you, and what an incredible brand you've built. And so happy to be wearing one of your chains and kind of, you know, really joining you in the mission that you set out for. And I think we need connection. We need to be connected to other humans in a deep way, and it's the way we're going to survive.
And for people who don't know you, I obviously gave you an introduction, but kind of how did you get here today? What's been your story in a brief overview?
Yeah. So I started my career as a television presenter. I actually went for a job on the Pepsi chart show and was such a loose cannon on live TV that the producer called me after and said, look, we really like you, but we couldn't put you on live TV. Do you want to do wildlife? And I was like, wildlife? No, nothing really about kind of wildlife. I did grow up with horses and animals, but nothing in that field. And I was like, yeah, okay, what's the first job? And my first job was a night dive with a great white shark in South Africa.
What?
And yes, and also my childhood had been spent terrified of sharks. My mum will tell you, like, to the point that I had books on sharks underneath my pillow. If we went away, I didn't want a room facing the sea. Like, it was quite extreme.
Right, okay.
So I started my career as a television presenter, was remember very vividly being on the beach in the Bahamas doing a story on dolphins, which sounds so bougie and so lovely, and thinking I'm so unhappy. And it was just like a really visceral moment where I was like, I am not living my purpose. I don't know what my purpose is, but it's not presenting. And I had some years before been on the bus and I'd heard two people behind me talking about drama therapy. Now, back when I trained as a therapist, one, therapy was not very common. Well, it wasn't very known. It wasn't talked about. It was for the very unwell.
Okay.
And drama therapy was not something that was very common at all. But I'd obviously logged it in my brain, came home from that shoot, left TV and was like, I'm going to look into what it means to be a drama therapist. And that was kind of my route in. I trained at Central School of Speech and Drama as an art psychotherapist first, and then kind of went on to build Self Space, really. So I left, I worked for Child Protection for a number of years. I specialise in young people and family systems. And because I had a history in TV and advertising, I often got asked to go back and talk about mental health. But could you not say mental health? And can you not really talk about feelings?
So how many years ago is this?
Oh, gosh.
Because that wouldn't be the case today.
No,
so,
we've moved on so far.
Not talking about our feelings.
We're still culturally in a place that whilst we talk a lot about it being okay, I still think we've got a long way to go, honestly. So I'm trying to think, I've been a therapist for close to 24 years. So this was a long time ago. So going into businesses, don't talk about mental health, don't talk about feelings. And I started to think, I think I might be able to do something in this space, which is a bit more progressive, that speaks to the wellness in us as opposed to the ill health, which is what had notoriously happened in terms of mental health. What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
As opposed to let's look at your potential and let's work with that.
You founded Self Space in 2017, is that right?
Yeah,
2017, with Chance. Can you tell me what Self Space is and tell people listening what it is, why you started it?
Yeah, of course. So Self Space is a contemporary mental health service. We are, in fact, the first on-demand mental health service on the high street. So we have a high street presence, which are gorgeous locations, and we also have a virtual service. We've got close to 200 therapists, and we service businesses as well as individuals. So your company could work alongside us to look at anything from policy all the way through to one-to-one therapy for your employees. And then, for example, if you wanted to come for a session, you could probably get one within the next hour, either online or in one of our shops.
Amazing.
So it was really launched to make access easier. It was to destigmatize the space more, which is we don't just have to go to therapy at crisis. We service crisis too, but also when we're wondering about how to make good relationships great, we might be facing a challenge at work, we might be wondering about how to reach our potential. We wanted to reframe the therapy landscape into something much more productive than it had been thought about. So normalizing, destigmatizing, and kind of having real bricks and mortar presence in the space.
Yeah.
So that's what we do.
It's amazing. And at a time when also, I think what's so interesting about your business is it was a time when the high street was kind of being decimated. We then came into the pandemic. You've got all these empty shops. So it kind of was a perfect storm, really, for you guys to set up. And I think, well, we've talked about this before, but everyone's always got something they're going through. And I think the intersection in retail and therapy is absolutely brilliant, but also retail and just connection, because we always say, recognize when we're like doing our pop-up shops and things, people come into stores and everyone's got a name and everyone's got a story, and you never know like who you're going to meet. And I think the fact that you're on the high street just makes it so accessible to people, because when you want to start therapy, honestly, like the biggest barrier is where to even find it. How do you, decision fatigue.
Yeah.
They're like, how do I know if they're good, if they're not good? Like, am I going to like them? Where do you even look? Like all of these things. And also don't forget that, well, you already know this, I'm just preaching to the converted, but if you're in that place, it's like so difficult because you're feeling crap. So you don't even have the energy to go find a therapist. So I just think what you've done is like totally so simple, so powerful.
Thank you. And I think you're right. There's so many people that fall off at the point of finding a therapist because one, we get too attached to the idea of what their credentials are. For me, what I believe in is it's about the relationship with the person. How do you feel in the presence of that therapist? And of course, they're a specialist, but it's about the connection. And we offer a therapist matching service, which is really popular. And that takes away some of that stress around.
How do you do that?
So it's a form online. It's real people. It's our lovely customer services team. They'll receive the form and they'll match you, handpick you.
Wow.
People on the
it's
team.
Like a dating service.
A bit like dating.
Swipe
and then,
left. Don't want them.
No, yes. And then they'll kind of, match and see how you get on. And if it doesn't work, you can move and find someone else on the team. So all of that stuff is just breaking down the barriers to access.
Yeah.
And also, I think the thing about shops on the high street is what we are saying is it's a good thing you're here. Notoriously therapy was in dark rooms, hidden, scuttling to the doctor's surgery or somewhere where you go when you're unwell.
True.
And I love the idea that people taking photos outside self space, they're kind of proud that they're there as opposed to strobe lighting and sticky chairs and what's wrong with you then?
And you've also, and I think what you're speaking to as well is you're normalising the language as well. I think you do like a New Year MOT. I remember you seeing that. It's a product, essentially. And I do think if you can make things in a way that people understand them, because then you're going to want to use it, aren't you? We don't need these really scary names, or it's just like you do a mental health checkup.
Yeah.
Great, I can do a checkup.
Just like you would have a physical health checkup or you go to the gym.
Exactly. It's amazing. And where did the idea come from?
I think I'd had it brewing for a while, and I knew that I wanted to do something, and I really felt it was about physical spaces. I really felt that it was about kind of moving the needle from what was effectively kind of very shame-filled into something that people could feel really super proud about. And I just had a feeling that I could do something. I wasn't exactly sure what it was going to be, but I had a sense that there was a kind of purpose in what I was thinking and feeling, and and I came up with the name Self Space. I had the idea and then I just began. I don't know about you, but I didn't spend hours on business planning and strategy. I just started.
Wow, and I think that's some of the best advice actually.
Just begin.
Anyone trying to start a business is just do something.
Yeah, just begin. And
but how did you begin?
So I took the first space. So I had.
Can you tell that story?
Yes. We started in a tiny little stable in Shoreditch. I was with my aunt. I'd been like playing around with the idea of wanting to do something. I had the name Self Space. I knew I wanted to launch something, and we took a wrong turn into this little cul-de-sac, and I was faced in the car right in front of a tiny little stable unit that said for rent, and my aunt was like, go on, do it. I think you should just take it. And so I took it. It was so cute. It was like really distressed, had it kind of, redone a little bit. And within 2 weeks of painting the front and putting the kind of heading on, we were full. I had 3 therapists at that point. And we were full pretty much. And The Guardian came past in that first month, did a double page spread, and I can remember thinking, okay, I'm going to need a bigger boat. And I got on the phone. I phoned every single business I'd ever worked for as a TV presenter, all of my historic jobs. And I said, I think you need therapy for your employees. And so many people just said, yeah, where do I sign? It was literally like that.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, how many can I buy? I was like, 3,000. Okay, yeah. And I thought, okay, right.
Okay. And isn't it amazing? When you have something where there's such a need, when, like you say, it was full within the month, people needed it, really.
And literally knocking on the door before we'd opened. It was, it was so heartwarming because I felt like we were a little beacon of hope. And I'd come out of sessions and there'd be people sitting on the bench. We always have a bench outside our shop. So I just think it's a really nice, just come and sit and just be there, because sometimes taking the first step is really hard.
Yeah.
And I'll notice people are there and they're like, oh, I'm not coming for a session. And I'll say, oh, would you want to hear about what we do? And sometimes that slow way in is really important. And I come out of sessions and people would all be squashed up on the bench outside.
Like, move up.
Yeah, move up. So it really felt like we kind of, we were there at the right time.
Yeah.
And and that just sort of radiated out. We didn't do any marketing. We didn't do any advertising. I wanted it to be a word of mouth experience, that people came to Self Space and they said they felt a bit better, or maybe they had a good experience with their therapist and they told someone else, and then they told someone else.
Yeah, and it's so powerful, and like really similar actually with Recognise. We've spent almost nothing on marketing, and it's all come from word of mouth. But of course it would when you have something that means so much to people.
So special.
You know, it's we both run businesses, but at the heart of both of our businesses is this care for human beings to feel connected, to feel loved, to feel recognised, to be whole, to be well.
And have a place. And whether it's a
but
place
they belong.
with someone. Yes.
Yeah. We always say you belong here.
Yeah.
That's our kind of, and it's the same with you guys. And I came to your Self Space dinner last May, and that was just the feeling, was like everyone is welcome here. There's not this feeling of exclusivity. And I think that's really rare as a brand, actually. We're always saying at Reckon, we're not trying to be cool.
No.
We're not actually trying to be cool.
And even what is cool anyway?
What is cool?
No one wants
we
cool.
just want to be real.
All want warm.
Yeah.
I
warm,
think.
Yeah. My godmother always says, we don't like cold people.
No.
We want warm and real.
The world is full of hard edges, and I think we've got to lean into what does it mean to be softer? What does it mean to be warmer?
Yeah.
We're all messy, you know. That is, I just think intrinsically we're so ashamed of not being perfect. You know, that the more we're able to reveal ourselves as confused, messy humans, I think the less alone we are, actually.
Yeah,
totally. And all of it's okay, you know.
Yeah. Your first what's it like is what's it like to be a therapist?
Do you know, I feel so privileged to do what I do. I think, obviously, like you, I find running the business incredibly hectic and stressful. The part of my week that I love the most is I only have one day that I work in clinic now, that I can just close the door and just be with another person at their best, at their worst, at their most vulnerable. It's such, I feel just blessed to be able to do that, honestly. And it's the part I notice it, I feel it knits me back together, being able to connect with other people on that level. Every single time I leave after having seen clients, I feel a little bit of myself has grown in awareness, in understanding, and whatever that is. I think there's a kind of, I've started never to say I'm a therapist when I'm at a dinner party or at a party, because you can bet your life someone's going to come over and say, can I talk to you about my friend's son?
Yeah.
Or could you diagnose me? And I'm like, doesn't really work like that.
Or you feel self-analysed.
You feel,
what if it might?
There's a kind of judgment, and I think there's an idea, and this kind of plays into what I was just saying about the historic idea about therapists, that they somehow aren't real, that somehow they're perfect. Like, are they mind readers? You know, how are they?
Right.
And actually, I think what makes a really good therapist is being in touch with their own fallibility, having experienced and lived through their own dramas and traumas, and knowing that they don't know it all, knowing that they're trying.
Why does that make a good therapist?
Because I think it brings you to a place of deep understanding and connection, and walking alongside your clients. And yes, I think we have to step in front sometimes, and sometimes we do know, and sometimes we're like, okay. But mostly I think it's about how deeply you've met yourself, that allows you to meet others as deeply as that, really.
Yeah. Wow.
That's kind of my take on it. But I think there is an expectation that we're not going to be, struggling at times, that we're not going to have our own problems and challenges. And I think that's a very outdated kind of idea around, support and what it means to be human, actually.
And I love what you were saying about, the best part of your week is actually when you're with a client. And I think that kind of really speaks to that idea of you have to have the big with the small. I think it's so important when you're doing something on a big scale, because obviously your heart and your compassion and the whole reason you got into therapy came from that place.
But when I draw it right back to what is the purpose of what we're doing, it's to help people feel seen, help them feel validated, and help them not feel alone. I can do that. I feel comfortable in that. So I think you're right. It's the small, it's the why.
Yeah.
It's the why. And Chance and I, every week we ask each other, can you remember why we started?
Wow.
Because otherwise you can get completely lost in the hype of whatever's happening.
Yeah. And do you find as like a social impact fan, which I would say you are, that's the thing that keeps you going?
Yes.
Ultimately. That's why
Yes.
he's asking that question.
Yeah.
Because I just don't know how you would do it without a driving motivation, because I just would not be motivated by money
No.
alone. You didn't get into this business to do that,
and it's hard, you know.
It's so hard.
That if you don't have the why, on the days where you're like, I've just had horrible conversation after horrible conversation, or you know, it's really tough running a business. It's not, you know, I think people see parts of, you know, they only see one part of it, and it's ultimately it's a relational thing, isn't it? Every single person that's working for you is expecting something of you. Everything rests on your shoulders at the end of the day. And I don't know if you feel that. I can sometimes feel that as a heavy load. It's like, you know, and then let's remember why we began.
Yeah, totally.
Gonna keep the heartbeat in it a bit.
I had a moment like before Christmas where I went into the toilet at work. I was just like crying, like,
awful.
But I had this moment. I actually came back and I kind of said it to our team, but I said, in that moment, I kind of said to myself, but Annika, is this worthwhile? Is it worth it?
And what was your answer?
Yes, like 100% yes, because it absolutely is worth it. And we always talk about it's worth it for the one person. It's worth it for the one person that needs our mental health dove to give to a friend who's really struggling with their mental health. And it brings, I love that you said beacon of hope. We often talk about symbols of hope, and it's worth it for, you know, just this, we at Recognise, you can register the pop-on that you wear and tell us why you wear it. And we get so many amazing messages in. Just this week, I got one from someone who said, I've just bought the cancer support initials for my parents who are lost to cancer. It means so much to have something to wear and remember them by. And, you know, that as well, like meeting customers on pop-ups and these just incredible moments where you just know that someone had the day changed and had this like moment of hope. And you go, actually, the hard stuff, the leadership, the stuff you don't want to do, it is worth it for that. But you have to have that to keep going. Just taking a little pause to tell you about Recognise, who brings you the Recognise What's It Like podcast. At Recognise, we give recognition to individuals, charities and causes to raise awareness, spark conversations and bring solidarity. Our award-winning jewellery brand brings together beautiful jewellery with amazing causes, and 100% of profits from our iconic statement pop-ons are donated to partner charities. Head to recognisestore.com to find out more and use the code Jodie to get 15% off your purchase. And I love what you were saying like earlier about, you know, this misconception that therapists don't have their own stuff that they're going through. And you saying, you know, it's actually more powerful if you've been through stuff yourself. You can be a better therapist.
Yeah.
Like your second what's it like is what's it like to go through a divorce. That is a massive thing. Like, why did you pick that? And can you just share a little bit about
why
that?
did I pick that as a question or as a
you know,
life
out
choice?
Of 3, what's it? Why did you do that?
Why did you choose getting divorced?
Well, one of my it's like, did you feel any judgment? Why did you do that? Why did you pick that as one of your what's it likes? Because you could have picked anything.
Yeah, I could have picked. Do you know, when I got asked the question, I just went for the first 3 things that came to me.
Yeah, I love that.
I still think getting divorced and separated, a bit like therapy, is quite shame-filled.
Yeah.
I don't think it's, you know, it's not something people talk about very openly still, you know, and I think there's a sort of stigma around it as well. Like, what didn't you get right? You know, what went so wrong that this was the outcome? And I think even as young people, we get told a lot about love. We get told a lot about beginning relationships. We don't really talk about endings.
It's so true.
We don't talk about how to end well.
Yeah.
We don't talk about normalizing the fact that we will shed friends through our lives. Endings happen, and they can be painful, and they can be hopeful, and they can be everything in between. What we talk about, and we still don't really talk about this very much, is death. Yeah. And that ending is so final. But we haven't normalized ending. So when I found myself faced with thinking about an ending, I didn't really have any point of reference. And I think that it's so important to know that it's all okay. You know, we do the best with what we've got. And I think we have to know that that's enough. And I think there are many people sat in very unhappy relationships and marriages because they can't understand how to end and what that might mean. And I think that's such a shame because I think it stops us living. So, yeah, I think it was a very difficult experience for me in a lot of ways, but it was much more difficult internally than it was actually the external process.
Okay. So when did this happen?
So I've been separated. I've actually only just got divorced, but 6 years ago.
Okay.
But
so about the same time you were starting the business.
I just, around that time, I know.
Don't you think sometimes life is like that, isn't it? You just have these, I always describe it as like two rivers that run alongside, this joy and this pain. And I'm sure, well, I'd love to know what you think, but that outpouring of sometimes you go through the harder things, I'm sure that got poured into self space in some way. And then look what you're now doing.
Yeah. And I think you just relocate your energy, don't you, in some ways. And you know, I do think we can hide in work as well. You know, I think work's, I don't know about you, but it's a refuge for me often when everything, I have to really pull myself back to go, am I hiding here in my work?
Yeah.
But, you know, my ex-husband, Oscar, was a massive supporter of self-space and still is. And he's definitely in the foundations of that business from an emotional point of view. And I'm grateful for that.
But also it's something that you would probably never imagine. For you, did you ever imagine that would be the outcome? Had you, because no one goes into marriage thinking
it'll be,
that's going to be the outcome. Like,
no, although it's really interesting because a friend of mine said to me that I said on the day of my wedding, this is just one chapter. And she said she thought it was a really curious thing to say. It wasn't even conscious for me then. But somewhere I think I didn't know exactly.
Yeah, what you meant.
I think, but I think somewhere I maybe did know that this was going to be a chapter in my life. Doesn't mean that it's any less important or any less valued or, you know, I guess I do think that it's way more complex. I think relationships are hugely complex. They're so nuanced, and I think we need to be open to every eventuality and not take it as a kind of personal failure or as a kind of, yes, let's be accountable. Let's look at our responsibility to it. That part I think is really important. And I sat with that for a long time. You know, what might I have done differently? What bit do I feel ashamed about? What, you know, where wasn't I the best version of myself? But also, how can I learn from that as opposed to be paralyzed in it?
Yeah, and not like open to other love and
Yeah,
future
exactly.
love. And I love that expression of ending well and how you also connect that. It's not just romantic relationships, it's friends as well. And it's all
and
of these
jobs
things.
And
it's
cities and wherever we leave, you know.
How do we end well?
Well,
Tell us. How do we end well?
Perfect magic formula? I think we have to know that even when we make decisions that feel painful and difficult, it doesn't mean that you're making the wrong decision. I think people can become terrified by that, which is
wrong or right.
Wrong or right. This is so binary.
Been a big thing,
you know, it's like, it's like you can have a million different feelings of grief and loss and panic, and it still be a really good decision for you.
Yeah.
And I think we have to know that I think about it as like jumping from one lily pad to the other, which is you go from some type of stability to, I don't know where I'm going to land here. And then you land, and you need to be able to bear the transition.
That's
and
so helpful.
In the transition of things, it's like even when you move house, it's like, I don't know where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
And then you find your feet again. It's about, can we bear the place of not knowing?
That leap. Yeah.
Not
and
knowingness.
actually, that's probably, you know, not to speak for you because you're a therapist, you probably know the answer to this.
Probably not.
I know something for me is I find uncertainty is something, it's probably one of the hardest things in life.
Yeah.
Holding that space and not knowing. And I think so much fear is based on just not knowing what's going to happen.
And it paralyzes people and they get stuck. And we can say, like, I call it the pain before the change. And it's like, I see people in therapy, I see my friends, they get stuck in the indecision for so long that sometimes they can't make the decision. And once they've done it, they're like,
should have made that ages ago. Yeah.
And it's actually the pain period before we do it. It's like, shall I leave my job? You can get stuck there for years.
Yeah. And you can ruminate over it again and again.
And it's the risk we're trying to avoid. Yeah. And actually there's risk in anything. And it's all right. You'll be all right. Somehow do we internalize a sense that whatever happens, it will be all right.
Yeah.
I think that we can hold on to that and it helps. And just do it. Just move through it. You know, give yourself compassion. Be with the grace of it, but do it. Keep moving.
So you're a big Nike slogan supporter.
Well, maybe. I feel like action overthinking sometimes is the way forward.
Underthinking, you mean?
No, I think taking action over too much thinking.
Taking action over, because you just do this. I'm a big this,
ruminating.
And you've just got to like stop that, haven't you?
Sometimes.
Oh, it's so hard. But do you know, James Corden, he said on a podcast with Jay Shetty, he said he has this.
Two.
I just adore them.
Yeah.
But he has this life phrase where he basically says, I don't know. And so when people say to him, oh my gosh, how do you feel about moving back to the UK? It's going to be the best thing ever for you. Or like, I think when he ended the show, everyone was actually like, you know, his late night show.
Yes.
Everyone was like, oh, is that going to be really bad for you? And he was like, I don't know. And then he gets another job and everyone goes, that's going to be amazing. And he says, I don't know.
Yeah.
I actually don't know whether something good happens or something bad happens. I don't know the outcome of how it's going to be.
Nice.
And I found that just really helpful, actually, to be like, you don't know. And maybe I think so much of our like pain and disappointment in life comes from misplaced expectations.
Agreed.
And so if you go into it actually being like, I don't know, it might be amazing. And if it's not amazing, like you say, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And you're going to figure it out. Like you have resources to work it out.
And also, I think that kind of sentiment helps to keep you present, because otherwise we fantasize, we romanticize, or we dread it, you know, and it could be anything in between. But I don't know about you, but I have never, ever regretted a decision I've made, as in the thing that I've done. I think we can look back and think, oh, maybe I could have done that. But mostly you've done it then and you've learnt from it and you've moved through it.
Yeah, and you made the decision with the best information that you had at the time.
Exactly, you did the best
and
that
when
you could.
you know that, you just... Because I have had regret over some decisions. But then as soon as I feel that, Joel just goes, yeah, but that was the decision you made at the time with the information that you had.
Yeah.
And I'm not in that place. I can't go back and change it. So that I clearly thought that was the good decision at the time, but it's changing your thinking again from me going, that was a right or wrong decision.
Yeah, binary.
To being like, there's this and I think for people who might not know what we're talking about, or maybe very much do, this became really obvious to me when I basically saw it turning up in other areas of my life. So I'd go to a restaurant and I'd be picking my food to eat, and I'd get so indecisive about what to eat. Do I get the burger? Do I get the chicken?
Don't know what I want.
Yeah. And then I basically realized it was basically driven by this thing of like, there's a right or wrong answer here. There's not a right answer whether I have a burger or a chicken. And I think you can apply, I know that sounds silly, but you can apply the same thing to a big decision.
Yeah.
And actually I just tried to spin it and go, these are both great options.
Yes.
So which one? They're both great options.
Yeah.
And, you know, even with two bad things, maybe we can try and be like, these are both great.
We can always order something else after. Like, it doesn't matter.
You can change it. I love that. So this idea of making a decision, not overthinking it.
And being expansive. Kind of that, the idea that I think when we become very small in our thinking, it does not help our capacity to kind of bear things. I think what we want is a kind of expansive, experience of ourselves and the world, which is anything is possible. You know, anything is possible. And I do think it is.
Wow.
You know.
And if you were, you know, someone's going through a separation right now, what would your advice be to them?
I think to be compassionate with yourself, to not take too deeply other people's opinions and views, because everyone will have an opinion. These types of decisions, they evoke a lot in other people. There's a lot of judgment and fear around these big life decisions, and it's often more about the other person than it is about you. Understand that you're going to go through a range of emotions, and just to be able to support yourself, share, find yourself in therapy or with people that love and care about you. And just because you have a big feeling about it doesn't mean you're not on the right track for yourself.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, you know, I went through huge phases of just feeling that, oh, I really miss him. I miss my life. I miss, you know, oh, I don't know what's on the other side of this. I want to go back because that feels better and safer. And to just allow those feelings to be, and they're transient. And it doesn't mean that needs action, right? You can tend to it, you can support yourself and keep moving through. So don't let it put you off.
Yeah.
If
But
that
you're
makes
also
sense.
saying kind of feelings aren't necessarily truth. It's sort of like don't action
listen.
on.
I think we can get really wedded to our feeling, and they're really transient. Like you can have one feeling and within 30 seconds you can feel something else.
Totally.
And there's a really nice little thing that you can do, which is at night and in the morning, just take a minute before you look at your phone and ask yourself, how am I feeling? How am I feeling today? How am I feeling, my love? Like, address yourself with warmth.
Oh.
Allow it all to come, like, oh, frightened, lost, confused. Just hear the words out loud and then ask, and what is it you need? And I promise you we'll find the answer. So it might be, I need a cup of tea. I need to connect with someone who cares about me. I need to lie on the floor for a minute. Just allow yourself to be super present with yourself, because it allows feelings space that they need, and they're more move throughable like that.
Move through you. Yeah. That's so beautiful. I know that you I just wanted to briefly touch on this idea as well about like stigma and feeling judged, because that was actually something I wanted to ask you. Did you feel judged in that time?
Yes, I did. I felt I lost quite a lot of friends during my separation, not through choice, but really it wasn't a conscious thing, I'm going to lose them. But I think they weren't able to understand the version of me that was emerging. They weren't able to cope with the change.
Yeah. So that's again back to like, it's actually more about other people
and what they're with.
Yeah,
you know,
that's interesting. That's like quite a helpful way to look at it, actually.
Yeah, people. I thought people were scared. You know, not everyone. I also came out of it with such incredible friendships and you know, such amazing support. But I really was able to witness people that were not able to embrace growth and change in others, and what does that mean? So there was a bit of kind of stigma there. Whether I was carrying it or it was real, but I felt a sense of people viewing me as wrong, or, you know, not good enough, or, you know, whatever it is that brings up your vulnerabilities. And I think we do judge as people. I think we're lying if we say we don't. I think it's a natural propensity as humans, and we have to check ourselves there. What is it saying about me? Every time I come into contact with a judgment about someone else or somebody else or something, how do we draw it back into what is it saying about me and my own fears? But I think we do naturally judge, actually. And I did feel quite judged, not by everyone, but by some people.
But then how did you, like, walking through that, or any shameful experience, any experience that you feel stigma in, whether it's mental health or going through divorce or all sorts of other things, like, how do you rise? Like, how did you rise in that? How did you keep your head high? Again, people going through this, like, also feeling that and just feeling that shame, which ultimately leads to disconnection, doesn't it? Because you just kind of do this and you hide. How can people be seen, and how can they show up and know that they're enough?
Yeah.
In it.
I think we have to be in contact with our own shame. So rather than batting it away, I think we can find a lot of distractions in the world, you know, whether it's drinking, whether it's, you know, shopping, whether it's busyness, whatever distraction we're using. I actually think shame is a great sort of neon, which is like, what is it trying to say to me? Like, what is it calling for me to know about myself? And I think if we're able to really be without defense around it, which is, it is really difficult, and I am really struggling, or I don't feel good about that, and I'm sorry, or, you know, whatever it is, come into contact with a softer part of yourself. I don't think anything sticks then, because you've already been in it for yourself. It doesn't matter what anyone says to you. It doesn't matter what anyone thinks about it. You've been there yourself and you've come back again, and you're like, okay, it's fine.
And I guess it's also that sense of like validating yourself, isn't it? And you can kind of hold that because you've been there and you've done that.
Yeah. And there isn't a sort of one shoe fits all. That's what I think it's all right to sort of flap around, stumble, make mistakes, and all of it's all right. You know, how can we have acceptance for that?
Yeah.
And I think that really helps.
And I think also having acceptance for like other people as well. And, you know, and also acceptance for friends and that they don't understand.
Yeah.
And it's just holding someone, I think Brené Brown says everyone's trying their best.
Yes.
And I think this, I don't know, that just comes to my mind with this sort of stuff.
And we have to believe that.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh, Jodie, you have just such wisdom and such, it makes me really happy that you are in the world and what you've created is, and just like the depths of what you've kind of walked through. And like, it doesn't surprise me for one moment that Self Space exists and that you've channeled all of your experiences, all of those moments into something so beautiful and so helpful for people. Is there anything else you would like to add?
No, thank you for taking the time to speak to me with such openness and sharing. So I'm so grateful to have had this space. So thank you so much. And what a gorgeous thing you're doing. And if we can support in any way, then let me know.
There's a lot of synergies, isn't there?
There's a lot of synergies. Yeah.
I feel like they were like sister companies.
Definitely.
Is there anyone you would like to recognise?
I guess I'd like to recognise all of the clients that step across our threshold, whether it's physically or virtually, and how much courage that takes actually. And every single story is so meaningful to me and to everyone on the team actually, and all the little snippets that we hear. I feel so much gratitude for that courage actually, because I don't think it's easy.
Yeah.
And yeah, thank you for recognising us and inviting us on. So yeah.
Loved it. Thanks, Jodie.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for the Recognise What's It Like podcast. We hope this chat has brought you hope and connection, has left you feeling inspired, and above all, has made you feel seen, valued, and recognised to the core. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.